All right. Welcome to episode 8 of The Future Belongs to Creators. I'm Nathan
8.
Barry,
I'm
and this
Barrett
is Barrett
Brooks.
Brooks. We'll just talk over each other. I promise we know how to podcast. All right. Today, we're going to be talking about how to launch a course, start to finish, how to create and launch a course in 72 hours, which should be a fun topic. I think there's a lot more that you can get done in 72 hours than you think if you stop refreshing numbers and all of that. But before we get into any of that, Barrett, how are you doing today?
I'd say I'm like a yellowish green. We call it sage around here. Let's see, why yellowish green? Well, we needed to make a trip to the grocery store, and it's a little bit nerve-wracking. Like, I don't know statistically if it's actually a risky thing, but the problem is the randomness of events that could expose you to the virus are unpredictable. So the good thing is our local grocery store has implemented some great measures. You have to stand 6 feet apart while waiting in line before you can go in, and then a limited number of people can go in. Within the store, you have to stay 6 feet apart at the meat counter and anywhere else where there's a potential line. And they have like shields in front of the cashiers and everything. And so they're doing a good job. But, I wore some gloves, I put on a mask, and I went. We don't have any N95 masks. We're not hoarding those, but just the normal surgical masks, which the more research I read, turns out any kind of mask is actually fairly helpful for preventing some level of exposure. And the government has been saying not to wear masks simply because the medical providers need them more, not because they're not effective, which makes sense if you think about it. If the medical providers need them, clearly they're effective. Anyways, give your N95s to medical professionals and wear a scarf around your face or something. So anyways, I went to the grocery store, got back, and then it's like, all right, I got to make sure that I clean this stuff and don't I'm anal retentive and like OCD a little bit. So when it comes to this stuff,
You've been wiping down all your electronics and everything before it was cool.
That's true. That's true. Before it was a recommended course of action on a regular basis. So anyways, I got in my OCD head a little bit this morning, and now I'm going to work the rest of the day, and I feel like I'll get in a good flow. So that's why I'm sage. How are you done?
That sounds good. I'd say I'm green. This is my 3rd podcast recording of the day. So
That's
I
a
was a
lot.
guest on a couple other podcasts, Copy Blogger and then MakerPad. So those episodes should be coming out soon. That'll be fun. And then I took a break, got outside. We have a big field behind us. Last night we planted a bunch of fruit trees. That was
More
nice
fruit
to do.
trees.
Yeah. Well, you can never have too many fruit trees, really. You can be a minimalist in many areas of your life, but orchards are not an area that calls for minimalism. So
I love it.
yeah. So, it's just good. It's sunny outside today. Yesterday was pretty cold. Yeah. So that has me green. Idaho did switch over into shelter in place yesterday. They weirdly defined the liquor stores as necessary, which is, I'm not sure I disagree.
Right.
I was just surprised. They're also state run in Idaho, so I don't know how much that.
Got to keep that revenue coming.
Yeah, they're gonna need it. So we're just playing through some of the implications of that. It was like there's a bunch of stuff that we need for the farm, and we're like, how much do we need this? We don't need it like we would need groceries. We don't need groceries, but and so these trade-offs of like, okay, I guess we're not going to the store for that. All right. So just making some adjustments there. But otherwise things are good.
There was an article here in the Oregonian, I think just yesterday, about how packed Lowe's and Home Depot have been. Some of the most crowded stores in the state, I guess, because now everyone's home and they're looking at around their house and they're like, oh, I got to do some work around here. Entertaining, but not safe.
Yeah. I went to Lowe's on Saturday, pulled in the parking lot. The most packed I've ever seen it. Kept driving through, pulled out the other side and went home. I was like, I was just going to get like 4 or 5 things for the tiny house. And I was like, I have plenty of projects to do. I don't need to participate in that. I was going to say something else. It's going well. Oh, randomly for anyone running a side hustle. So it's been interesting running an Airbnb during this time. We've got our little fourplex that we've been renovating, and we had a bunch of cancellations related to the coronavirus. We have one unit online right now and another one coming up online this weekend. And we had people they weren't canceling because of the coronavirus, but since Airbnb changed their policy, like it was like their house was available sooner, so they canceled a whole week of stay. Anyway, it's like, okay, well, you probably needed the money more than I did, so that's fine.
Great.
But we actually just got a booking on that one unit for an entire month, and so it's like, okay, that's going to be good. So that little side hustle seems like it's going steady, and we'll see how it goes.
That's awesome. For more context, if you haven't read Nathan's newsletter or blog about it, he, with a couple of friends, bought a 4-unit, almost like apartment building in a way. And they're converting it and remodeling it into beautiful, like modern little Airbnb units, which I think is pretty awesome. So,
yeah. Well, let's check in on some numbers. I actually haven't looked.
I haven't looked either. I find myself detaching from it. It's like, so the numbers are so big now that it's just a lot, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, no, it totally is. And I think that they just don't mean as much anymore, which is kind of this, not they're not meaningful, but that they become unrelatable.
Right. Which is
what?
the scary part about it.
Yes, it is. Okay, so we're over 500,000 total globally. That had to happen, 500,000. Italy is right behind China, knocking on the door. China's holding number one at 81,782, and Italy's got 80,589. And we are not far behind. Okay, so today, while we were wondering, we're kind of taking bets. You got to bet on something. There's no sports to bet on or anything. Of what day the U.S. would pass Italy, it will be today.
Yeah, over New York Times reports over 14,000 new cases in the U.S. yesterday. That was after we had 2 days of almost flat growth, not flat, but equal growth.
Flat new, yeah.
And then it picked up again. So continues to accelerate.
Oh man. All right. Well, let's use our time to dive into talking about how to create and launch a course in 72 hours.
I'm really excited about this topic because weekend is a perfect time to think about this topic in. And as I was grocery shopping, I was thinking about what I wanted to kind of contribute related to this conversation. And one of the biggest things I thought we could start with is the mindset you have to have about a course when you're thinking about doing it in a short period of time. And I think it's a great opportunity to talk about this concept of MVP, or minimum viable product, or in this case, minimum viable course. And I think one of the most important things you have to remember is you are going for only the essentials when you're doing something quickly like this. And you have to understand the difference between what is paramount for someone to understand related to the topic you're about to teach versus what you could add later. And so I think about things like the core lessons. I always go to things like how to find a great job, because that's what my old business was. And there's all of these ideas I have about like interviewing people who work at incredible companies and having that as bonus material for the course, or searching through applicants who we've hired and asking their permission to include their cover letter or resume as an example of a great one that leads to getting hired. Those things can be added later. They aren't necessary in order for someone to understand how to get a job, because all the stuff they need to know is just up in my head. And so one of the first things that you need to know is, what is the minimum viable? And viable is really important too. So there's enough information that it's really valuable, but it's not so much that you can't get it done. So you got to go in thinking, what are the essentials?
Yep, that's really good. And that's where we kind of start. Is we broke this down into 3 days, right? 72 hours, 3 days. So day one being create the content and the outline, and then also get that landing page spun up. Day two, it's time to film and edit. Day three, you're going to add that level of polish, and then you're going to start promoting. So as we dive into that, right, you're talking about that content outline of finding the most essential things. I always start with a brain dump, just putting everything down that I think could go in there, and then start to analyze it based on 2 categories. One is, what do I think is most useful? And let's prioritize that content, because this is going to be the first version of the course, and we're going to keep iterating on it. Like, don't think that, oh man, I get this out, it's set in stone, and like, that's the course. Instead, it's like, the point is to launch and get going quickly and then iterate from there. So it's what's most useful because we want to start there. And then what actually can be done quickly. Like there's a lot of things in the truly great course, the version you have dreamed up for version 2, version 3, or whatever, that are going to take time. Maybe there's some of those interviews or you want to compile more information that you can't get to right now. So still list that out, but know that it's not going to be in that very first version because it's going to take some more time.
Yeah. And the other thing here is I think, especially if this is the first course you're creating, you're going to have a tendency to want to include everything. Number one, you're going to have a tendency to want it to be completely scripted. And something you've got to realize going in is you don't have time to script if you're trying to get something out quickly that captures your knowledge and teaches people something valuable. And so anytime I'm giving a talk or I'm going to deliver a workshop, or even if I'm going to lead a team meeting, I always think about in the concept of almost like, let's call them clothes hangers. And each clothes hanger is a point that I want to make. And in between hanging that clothes hanger and the next one, which is the next key point that I want to make, I've got a little room to kind of riff and just share some perspective that doesn't have to be word for word exact. It just needs to capture the basics of what I know about the topic and that I want to share. And so another way that people talk about doing this is picking points in a room that you're talking in. And that being kind of like you're talking to the first point while looking at the first point in the room. You're talking to the second point so my bookshelf is a point about knowing the kind of company you want to work for. My whiteboard is thinking about your personal values related to that. My window over here is you presenting yourself in a light that makes them want to hire you. And so there are these little tools you can use. And the point is your outline should be the key points you want to make, not every word that you're trying to say when you're filming, because you just don't have time to write every word.
Yep, that's good. So let's focus on, so there's that outline. We'll get into filming tips as well coming up in just a second. But once you have that content outline of what you're going to cover, that's actually going to give you some of what you need for the landing page. And I think there's a tendency to want to do the landing page very first. And we advocate like create a landing page really early, but do the content outline first, because then as you do that brain dump and start to format your outline, then you'll know, okay, this is who it's for. This is what I'm teaching. And then some of those headlines start to come together. So as you turn to creating a landing page first, I would say go to landingpage.new. There's 40 templates there. You can choose a great template. It's totally free, and start creating the template for your course or ebook or whatever it is that we're putting together. And a couple of things that you're going to find. One, if you put some great imagery in there, it'll make the template look really good from the default. So a little design quick tip is go search that Unsplash integration, find a photo that looks really good, and then fade it over a background color. So fade it over a red background or, like a rich blue or something like that. And that's going to give a bit of depth and interest to your landing page that you didn't have before. And then the other thing is know that writing the headline is going to be one of the most difficult things. And so we have some more resources here that maybe we can link to in the show notes. But the first thing is just write something down, even if it's very like really vague of who it's, this is the course for whoever, I've started things like, Photoshop for web design and like title the course that, and that works as a headline to get started. Another way that you can think about it, our friend Clay Aber has this little formula that he does of verb your noun. So you just say like grow your audience, fund your dream, any of these things that you can put in there. And so there's a few of those little headline formats that can work well.
Yeah. And I almost think about a headline as there's kind of two ways I tend to write them. One is a promise I'm making to the person. I will help you, whatever. And that kind of fits in nicely with Clay's formula as well. You don't put in the I will help you, but if you think in terms of I will help you fund your dream, that works really well. And so thinking about the promise you're making to the person that they're going to get out of taking your course. Another way to think about it is, what is the ideal person, the one person? And I think this is actually a really good tip. Who's the one person you're making this course for? What is their desire that they want? What is it that they wish they could change about their life, or the thing that they hope for the most? You're trying to capture that in one quick little, not even a sentence really. It's just a few short words. And I'd say if you can keep it 6 to 8 words or less, the fewer the better. If you
Yep.
can capture the core idea, that's what you want in a headline.
Yeah. So once you've got that basic landing page, start by tweeting it out, sharing. I would even claim the goal publicly of I am starting to create this content and the course will launch on Monday morning, at 8 a.m. or whatever time. By Friday at 5 p.m., this course is going live. Sign up here so that people can follow along and they can get excited about your journey and all of that. So get that landing page up, keep it really simple. You don't need to give away a sample chapter or a free lesson or anything like that. Your call to action is purely be the first to hear when this is available. And so you get that landing page up. Let's turn our attention to day 2 for a second. So we're talking about filming and sitting down to film. And there's 3 tips that I want to run through really quickly that make a huge difference when you're filming. And we'll get into, talking about some of the other structure things. But as you turn on that camera, you're going to get in front of it, and then you're going to totally not know what to say. Like you're going to screw it up. You're going it's going to be terrible. And then you're going to walk around behind the camera, or if you're using your webcam or whatever, you're going to stop that recording, delete that file, and you're going to start over. And that is a terrible way to go because it's this like stop and start and these little jerks, and it's not going to get you anywhere. So the biggest tip is leave the camera running. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to say things poorly, whatever else. And instead, what you do, instead of stopping or starting the recording, you just do a snap or a clap. And that indicates to yourself editing later that you want to come back and clean that up. And so when you're editing, you'll look in that audio file for the little spikes that are very obvious claps or snaps. And that's what you edit off of. So by leaving the camera running, you're actually gonna let yourself get in a groove, get more comfortable, keep talking, and go from there. The second one is to follow an outline, not a script. There are professionals who can read and, they're reading off a teleprompter and you can't tell and they sound fantastic. And I'm not one of those professionals. I'm guessing that you're not one of those professionals either. And it's so obvious when someone is reading that intro or reading off a script. And so instead, like Barrett said, have those sections that you want to go through. Okay, in this 2 minutes of what I'm talking about, I'm going to cover these 4 points, and I have them mentally mapped to the parts of the room. And so when I see the couch over there, I'm like remembering, okay, that's point number 4. Let's talk about that. And if you make a mistake, quick little snap, say it again and dive back in, but try to find that flow rather than reading. And then the final tip that I have on this is if you're recording tutorial type content. So I did a whole course on Photoshop for web design. It's a bunch of short lessons, 3 to 6 minutes per lesson, and a lot of live screencasts, right? Because I'm showing you. Instead of scripting out every single thing, I would record the whole lesson, set that file aside, and then record the exact same thing again. And so there was no outline or any of that. I just had a rough concept. And in doing it twice, I found that the runtime for the same content was about half the length each time. And it was just more polished and all of that. And it was still way faster than like writing a script and detailing out each thing.
Yeah, I love that. A couple of ideas for these times. Number one is you don't need a nice camera to film a course. That's the first thing. Sound is way more important actually than video. So if you weren't going to start tomorrow, I would suggest ordering a mic. If you don't have any kind of mic, order some kind of mic. We can link to a post in the show notes. A guy named Chase Reeves, who I used to work with, did a great breakdown of a bunch of different mics and what they're good for and different price points and all that. But order a mic and then use your iPhone, your webcam, your Mac camera. Anything will work from a video standpoint. I think even this background for me, this would work okay, especially if I put like a blanket up over my window so there weren't reflection. Or I could do my bookcases over here as a background. So something you don't want it to be distracting, but you want a little texture, I think, that gives your videos a little character beyond just you being a talking head bobbling up and down. The second thing is a whiteboard. Like if I were filming right here, if I could have a whiteboard over there, or if you want to entertain your kids, you could say, you're going to be my producer for my TV show. You want to help? And they could hold up little note cards or something like that. So that's another, having the outline somewhere back behind you or on an easel or whatever you can come up with can be a really reassuring thing. And sometimes you don't even need it, but just knowing it's there is comforting. And then the last thing I would say is, oh shoot, I'm going to lose it. It was the outline on the whiteboard, and
maybe we'll come back to it.
It'll come back to it. Yeah. Keep going.
Quick thing to add there. Your phone camera is really quite good. So if you don't have an HD or a high-end webcam or some other camera, the phone camera is a great default. And then if you have a spouse with a phone, or you happen to have a spare phone, you can record the audio. So say I set this up, I've got this camera, I'm recording in landscape view because all video should be recorded in landscape. And I have that set up over on my tripod, or however I have it rigged up, like that's on the bookshelf and it's like awkwardly propped into place. That's fine. But then if I have a second phone, I could bring that much closer and record the audio, some way that I can get it out of the shot. Like, I don't know if you can have it right up here, just barely out of the shot. And I record my audio on that and I can sync it up later. That works well also. But don't let any of those things get in the way. Like, you can dive in. There's a tool called Soapbox by Wistia that does a great like screencast and, live shot of you, and lets you cut between them nicely. And I would just start there. And remember, same thing with the recording twice. This is the first version of the course. Sometime in the next week, month, or 6 months, you'll record the second version. And for that one, you'll know more of what you want to say, and you'll have a better camera setup and a better audio setup for it.
Yeah. I remember what I was going to say. Sometimes it's a lot easier to share your knowledge if you're being interviewed. And so one way to go about this, especially if this is your first course and you have an understanding spouse who is also motivated for you to make money from building a course, is you could write the questions and they could ask them to you in order. And it's really easy actually to cut that out. Don't talk to them, talk to the camera, obviously, but having them in the room and asking the questions as you go as prompts can be a really great way for you to stay in a groove and just answer them, which is a really natural conversational way that people, I think, will enjoy. And so that might be a little hack for getting past some of the I can't do this on camera type thing. So anyway, some little tips here and there to
that's really good.
Okay, editing.
Yeah. Okay, so no, you go.
No, you go. Well, I was just going to set the stage. So here's what you're not trying to do with editing. You're not trying to create a motion picture that's going to debut in theaters. You're trying to get the minimum respectable edit, which means cutting out. Sometimes you can leave in a blooper here and there, but cutting out the stuff that doesn't belong. So the content that you meant to cut out, or, the first take or whatever, you're cutting that out. Maybe you do some lower thirds that just highlight the topic. So a lower third is just a little bit of text or graphic that comes across the bottom of the screen. You see this on newscasts when they put up their name or the headline that they're talking about. And that's probably about it. I don't know that you need much more than that for a first pass. Nathan, you may have a couple tips for things that you do that make it a little more polished, but you're not looking for much in the edit.
Yeah. So the other thing that I would say, and this is a tip that's also from Chase Reeves, who you mentioned, is edit backwards. So the tendency is to start at the beginning and go forwards. But remember, if we're leaving the camera running and we're doing these snaps at the end of every bad take, then your last take of any idea is going to be the best one, because when you were happy with it, you moved on. And so if you edit backwards, you're going to go and chop up your, going through your best takes and moving backwards. And it's way faster. It really speeds things up. The other thing that I'd say is just know that you can always re-upload another version of the video. So if the first one, you do this quick edit, like it's the right content, but there's no B-roll. You didn't cut over to the screencast the way that you wanted to or any of that. That's fine. We'd suggest uploading this to Wistia, because you can track the views and other things like that. And Wistia will let you re-upload the same video multiple times. So you could get this up there and say, okay, it's good enough, but I'm not proud of it yet. And then, next week when you have a little more time, you could dive in and do a second round of the edit, get some more details and polish in there, and then upload the latest version.
I like that. One other tip, if you're really feeling ambitious, is you could use a tool like Canva and create kind of a template for an intro screen that would say the name of the lesson, and that would add even just a little bit of extra layer of polish. And I would only do that if you've got the spare time on day 2, because it'll be fine without it either way.
Yep, for sure. Let's talk for a second about where to actually host it. Because I realized I said, hosting on Wistia, that gives you a ton of flexibility, especially if this is a free course or an email course where, you're just sending out daily emails. But, if you're charging for this course, you're ultimately going to want to host it on a paid platform. There's 3 that we work with and recommend the most. Those would be Teachable, Thinkific, and Podia. They're both great platforms run by friends of ours. So I'd check out each one, play with it a bit, but please don't spend all of your time on choosing the right platform, because at this stage, you want to spend your time creating content, and then the platform that you go with is more of a secondary decision. It's not the most important thing right now.
That's right. If you get stuck in that decision, a zip file with all of the videos delivered by Gumroad or ConvertKit is a better option than a platform.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to say is I think a lot of people have a question about how much content is enough for a course. And what I would be shooting for if I were making a course that I was going to charge a couple $100 for is maybe 90 minutes of really solid content at most. And so that neglects, any bonuses or interviews you might include, but I'm not going for more than 90 minutes of content. Number one, because people don't have that long of attention spans. And number two, if I can't cram it into 90 minutes, I'm not clear on what I'm trying to teach. So at most, I'd say you're going for 90 minutes. If you're going for something more like free, I'd say a half hour max. You don't need to be recording more content than that for something that's going to be free. And if you chop that up into, let's call it 3 to 6 minute lessons, you're going to get a lot of content out of that amount of time. And so you should be able to record, if you kind of, let's call 3 times the content length is what you might take to record with different takes and things like that. You should be able to record in about half a day your content here, and then transition maybe after lunch if you're working a full day into editing on day 2.
Yep, I completely agree there. Another thing that I would say is, let's talk pricing for a second. So when you launch this thing, there's 2 competing things that are going to happen. Is it really worth this amount of money that everyone's saying I should charge? And it's not quite at the level of polish and everything that I want. So something amazing you can do here is you can say, let's say we're teaching something really, really important. Well, let's go with design skills, right? If you implement all these design skills, you're going to level up your career. It could be really, really meaningful. So I'm going to charge a good amount of money for this. Maybe I want to charge $200 for this course. But what I have right now is the MVP, and I don't feel good charging $200 for the MVP. So what I do is I launch and say, okay, this is where we're going. This is what it's ultimately going to be. But if you buy now, I'm going to give you this and all future updates at $50. So I have this incredible pre-launch price. Maybe it's $75, whatever you pick, depending on how much you get done. And you're able to offer this great price to the early, the people who backed you from the beginning, and also feel like it's really justified. And then you can ramp up and get momentum instead of launching this thing at a really high price when you know that the value is not there yet and you feel uncertain about your offer.
I love that. I'm just going to call out, this is going to be a 40-minute episode today because we've got a lot to say on the topic of creating a course. And I think it's really valuable for especially people who are looking for new revenue streams right now.
Yeah.
So we've still got day 3 to get to.
Yeah. You want to talk through some on day 3. And then I want to show an example, maybe to conclude this, of a course that I created start to finish in 24 hours.
I love it. Okay. So day 3, we called this polish and promote. So here's how I want you to think about your 3rd day, which is the last one you have to create this thing. You wake up, you have some breakfast, you grab a cup of coffee or tea or whatever you do in the morning, and you sit down. You get 90 minutes. That's all you get to polish. So if that means adding it, going into Canva and creating something as an intro screen, if that means adding lower thirds to your videos, when I say polish, I mean polishing the edit. So any nice little touches you can add that gives it a layer of professionalism that's not there, that you weren't able to get to on day 2, that's what you get, but you only get a little bit of time. So you don't get to spend all day on that, because perfectionism is the enemy when it comes to creating a course and getting it out there. And every ounce of your body is going to be saying, I can't actually publish this. I've made a horrible mistake. And the thing is, that's what everyone feels. That's what I would feel. It's what Nathan would feel. It's what everyone feels. And your job is not to listen to that. So on the promotion side, here's how I would think about promotion. Where do people follow you right now already? So whatever social media platforms that you typically use where people are following along, whether that's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, wherever, is somewhere where you want to mention it, obviously. Ideally, you've got a little bit of a pre-launch list thanks to creating your landing page on day one and people paying attention. So you've got some people to send some emails to. And that's pretty much it. That's where I would start. I would start with social media and emailing your list. When it comes to emailing your list, you get 3 emails. That's all you get for promotion this first time around. The first email is, hey, it's live. Here's what you're going to get from it. Think about each email gets 1 point. You get to make 1 point per email, and you get to have 1 link per email. Okay, that's it. You don't get to link people to a bunch of different stuff. You don't get to make 12 points. 1 point. Day 1, you're launching. What is the core value proposition of the course? So all you're doing is you're reinforcing the headline from your landing page with a bit more content. Think of it like 3 to 4 paragraphs about what someone's going to get from this course and how their life will change as a result of having taken it. Email 2. Ideally, this would go out, let's call it 2 or 3 days later. And in that time, what I would do is I would have a really trusted friend who maybe kind of cares about this content go through it and then give you a quote about what they thought about the content and why they thought it was great. Tell them to say their critical feedback for you to do version 2, but this is their nice feedback. And their nice feedback is the subject of email 2. It's social proof for someone that has taken it, liked it, and here's what they thought, so that anyone that's on the fence and maybe hasn't bought it or didn't sign up yet, if it's free, has a reason to do that based on someone else's opinion. And then the third email, I would probably approach this like an open close launch for the first time. And I'd just say, hey, or even just the introductory price is going away on this day. Let's call it 5 days after launch. So you email day 1, day 3, day 5. And that email is a reminder of why it's valuable, what the price is now, and what it's going up to as of midnight tonight. Get in now if you want to take advantage of the early pricing. That's all you got to do on day 3 of your 72-hour creation for promotion.
That's all good stuff. All right, I'm going to show this project that I did, I want to say back in 2014. I know it was after ConvertKit launched because it uses ConvertKit, but that's all I know as far as dates and times. So it is called 10 Days to Better Design. It was my challenge to myself to make and launch a course, not in 72 hours, but actually in 24 hours. And I did even get a little bit of sleep in there too. So this is now super old, but just walk you through it. So basically what it is it's 10 lessons, basically lessons and design skills all delivered through ConvertKit. It's a little different in that I didn't do much video, but as it breaks down, it's a lesson a day for 10 days, walking you through it. There's me looking super young. I charge a really low price for it of just $10. Yeah, thank you. Yep, get your laughter in there now, Barrett. Would you say I look 12 or 14?
Oh, you're at least 14 there.
Okay, good.
You know how to iron at that point, clearly.
That's right. But a little thing that I even did is here I had multiple packages, which we could do a whole episode on pricing. But yeah, this was just sold through Gumroad. And then it was delivered through ConvertKit. So basically what happens is as I jump over into ConvertKit, what you'd see is each exercise going out a day at a time. And it's just the details and the lesson. I'll show you a couple of these. Like I had a whole lesson on how design is in the details. And then we took an example of a news site, in this case, Fox News, and had people redesign it and like get into the spacing and alignment. Another lesson that I did is this isn't the one I was thinking of. I'm trying to think which ones. One of the last ones, right? I'm trying to teach people design lessons. And so I took a screenshot of the entertainment area in my car, right? So you control the radio and all this on the little touch screen, and said, okay, this has all kinds of design problems in it, but now you have all the data and all the information. So here's some lessons on how to design it. And I gave people a Photoshop file and stuff like that. And then I had a little link at the bottom where people could come together and share their work. and all the students could participate in it. So this was not a massive thing to do. It came together quickly. I did it in a format where I could keep iterating and improving on each lesson. I didn't charge a crazy price. I was at $10 and $15 because that matched kind of the scope of what I was doing. And then I launched it really quickly, and I sold about 250 copies of it. And it was really great practice for me. People loved it. And it proved to myself and to other people that you can launch a course or a new product a lot faster than you think.
Totally. And in a time like this, that's a rent or mortgage payment or, several months of groceries or whatever that looks like. So just a good reminder that the motivation for this episode is very much of the times and knowing that some people need new sources of income. And a course is a great way to do that quickly. Today is a Thursday as we're recording this live. So you have the perfect weekend window coming up. Emily, our listener, who says she hasn't filmed her videos yet, even though she's had a course finished since January. It sounds like Monday we'll see you on the show and you'll have your course out, which is really exciting.
I love it. Let's dive into creators of the day and start to wrap this up. One quick thing: tomorrow is Q&A Friday,
Yes.
so get some questions ready. We'll do that.
Tweet us the questions for tomorrow,
Yes.
and we will compile them all and answer them live. Creators of the day. Let's see. My creator of the day is a food blogger and actual farmer named Andrea Bemis. Her and her husband Taylor own a farm just near Mount Hood, east of the city here in Portland. My wife and I belong to their CSA, Community Supported Agriculture, which is where you pay money up front for the season, and they bring us fresh vegetables every week, actually. So she also has a food blog called Dishing Up the Dirt and a fantastic cookbook as well. And the recipes are really good. I would think of them as like fresh, healthy farmhouse cooking, basically, is her kind of style. I'm a huge fan of Andrea. I really hope we can get her out to speak at Craft and Commerce at some point. But they just had their first kid as well. They're a great follow on Instagram. If you want to follow them there, their farm is called Tumbleweed Farm. And they're a lot of fun to learn from, especially if you're interested in running a food blog or if you just enjoy cooking great, delicious food.
Oh, I love that. I'll have to check them out. All right. The one that I have is David Latimer, who runs New Frontier Tiny Homes. He's out in Nashville. He's very excitable guy, really into great woodworking and all of that. But he just makes these tiny homes that are absolutely next level. Some of the nicest ones out there. I'm trying to think, this one here that you can see, but if you check out his Instagram, it's just absolutely gorgeous places. His stuff is what inspired me on my tiny house. I didn't want to do a garage door because that was beyond my skill level, but to do a big double French door and then a big sliding door opposite it, so that the living room in my tiny house has a ton of natural light. So they've got all these amazing tiny houses that they've built, but newfrontiertinyhomes.com.
Oh man, the photography on those are great.
Oh yeah, they just, the level of polish across everything. But my favorite thing about him, go back on his Instagram and dig back through the blog, and his first tiny house is completely average. Great you can lesson. See his improvement over time. He didn't come in as like one of the greatest, tiny house builders of all time. You can see how he worked up to it, and it's pretty cool. It's all there in public.
I love that. Okay, resources of the day. You are going to catch on that I'm thinking about books and reading a lot right now, because what else am I going to do? I've had a Kindle forever. I don't know, it's like maybe a first generation Kindle, and it works perfectly fine. But we had a kid, and the kid goes, I think I mentioned this on another episode. The kid goes to sleep early, and then I lay down, and my Kindle, which doesn't have any backlight, does not work in the dark. So my wife, with credit card points, ordered me a Kindle Paperwhite that's just got the backlight. I don't want anything else on my Kindle. I just want to read. So I don't want the full, tablet version. But I got a Paperwhite, and now every night I can go in my room after my kid's asleep. My wife was already asleep. That's fine. I can leave the lights off and not disturb anyone. And I can read before bed to take my mind off of things, which is fantastic. So if you don't have a Kindle, well, it doesn't matter what e-reader you get, but I use a Kindle, and get one with backlight so you can read in the dark.
Yeah, that's good. All right, mine is a card game called Hanabi. If you happen to be spending a lot of time at home without your friends, so it's you and your spouse, like in a hypothetical situation, if that were to ever happen, there aren't very many two-player games. And this is one that looks like Hillary and I have had since December 21st, 2015. It's this like sort of deck building game that you can play just two of you, or you can have more friends. Basically, you can see their cards and they can see yours, but you can't see your own. It's super fun. It's challenging, and you really have to work together and strategize. So I like it. You should check it out.
Love it. Okay. Thought of the day comes from James Clear. I was thinking earlier, I'm just going to text James and tell him that we actually have a podcast that is just a podcast version of his newsletter because we reference him so much. But he's got this great concept that he teaches called Start Before You Feel Ready. And the premise is a lot like what you were just saying about the tiny house guy, that it may not be as polished as you want it to be. This correlates nicely actually to Ira Glass's quote on taste versus ability. Maybe we'll use that. Maybe we'll read that in an upcoming episode. But this is the perfect episode to embrace the idea that you should start before you feel ready, because you know something. You already know something. You have some kind of expertise that someone else could learn from you, and not your peers, not people who know more than you. All the people who know nothing about the topic is who you're making this course for. So start before you feel ready. Friday's a great day to do it. Or maybe if you want to do it during the work week because your kids are home, they want you on the weekend, whatever. But take advantage over this next week and maybe consider spending 72 hours starting before you feel ready by making a course.
All right, that's all we've got for today. Tweet us some questions. I was going to say lessons. No, we're providing the lessons. Actually, if you have lessons for us, you can send us lessons on Twitter as well as questions. But tomorrow we'll be back at the same time, same place for Q&A Friday. All right. Have a good day. We'll catch you later.